and you bear that certificate. And oftentimes, in most cases, uh, uh, a regent that would be dispatched from a king would be carrying a certificate, either a cylinder, if it's way back in the ancient times, Mesopotamians, or let's say, the medieval times, might be carrying a parchment, right?
Right.
And that parchment or that cylinder will be sealed. It's going to have a seal on it of authentication. Okay? Sealed with authentication. And if it's a parchment, picture a scroll with the wax seal. And we've all seen this in movies and stuff, and where the king or the pope will drip a little bit of wax on the rolled up parchment, or whatever. It doesn't have to be rolled. And then they'll take their signet ring, usually. They'll take their signet ring. That's what a signet ring is, and they'll press it down onto the wax, and it will imprint an image. And do you know what that image was? Usually, almost in most cases, it was an image of their likeness. Okay? So if I'm a king, I'm about to give you a certificate of authentication that you are my regent. Okay? Before I give you the certificate, I roll it up, I drip some wax on it, then I take my signet ring, which has my likeness on it. My image, my likeness is on the signet ring. And I take that ring and I press it down into the wax. And I hand you this certificate of authentication that has my likeness sealed on it. That's us. That's Adam. So imagine God creating Adam to have dominion, giving him the title deed of the earth, right? He pictured God, and I know this obviously isn't what happened actually, but as a thought experiment, picture God taking his ring, his seal with his likeness on it, and pressing it into the earthen clay.
Mm-hmm.
He sealed us with his image.
Wow.
We literally bear his seal of authentication that we have dominion on the earth. And the image we bear, literally what we look like, this image identifies us. We are identified as those who have authority from the king. Just like that seal on the parchment and you carry that seal on the parchment with you as my regent. If somebody challenges you, you show them that seal.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I have authority from the king. And if you cross me, guess what's going to happen? The armies of the kingdom are going to show up. Right? That's us. That's our situation on earth. And so we're made in the likeness of God. We're sealed with his image. I believe that and that's part of our birthright. And when we replicate that image through reproduction, our children are sealed with Adam's birthright, with the dominion of the earth, with the authority with which God has invested Adam. And it's a collective thing, by the way, and it doesn't just pertain to Christians or Hebrews or something. It's the human race. Okay? And so we're sealed with the image of God. And so then without going too much further into this, kind of giving you a preview of what's coming ahead in the last chapters, what happens when we forfeit the image of God? When we evolve out of Adam, when we become post-human and we surrender the authority of God that is contingent on this seal, the image we bear. What happens? And I answer that question. And I believe that will happen at the end, and that is the machination. That is the Luciferian machination to usurp the authority, the dominion of planet Earth. And that is how that's how it's done. And that, by the way, has happened. It happened one time in the past, and that was at the advent of the Watchers.
Absolutely, yes. And there are still people today who called this time in history the Golden Age. And we do have to talk about the Golden Age. But before we do, where can people get your book and follow you online?
The only place my book is available right now is on Amazon.com. And it's you can find it. You should, before you would type my name in, it'd be like 10 items down. But now it's kind of working its way to the top. I think it might be at the top now. So just type my name in. It's the only thing I have on Amazon. Type my name in on Amazon. Or if you have a hard time finding it, you can go to my website and there's, click on the link there. There's a direct link on my website. And if you want to follow me, the best way to do it is to sign up for my mailing list. And that's it. Right now, it's in an obscure location on the bottom of my website. I'm going to move it up pretty soon. Maybe today I'll work on it and put it in a more clear spot. It's on there. It's like at the very bottom. And, don't email me to sign up. Just sign up. Just put your email in on the sign up and click sign up, and you should be good to go. So that's how people can follow me and get my book.
Excellent. What's your web address?
TimothyAlberino.com.
Excellent. Well, we have a lot more to talk about. Fall of the Watchers, Book of Enoch, Cyclopean architecture, the satanic priesthood of Cain, lesser known facts about what the flood of Noah was really about, and so much more. So we might look back to the time before the fall as a type of golden age for us, but there's another golden age different from the time that Adam walked with God. Instead, this was a time where gods walked with men. What can you tell us about this concept of the golden age?
The golden age, universally across the earth, in every major ancient culture on earth, and I say major, I mean like there's a lot of obscure little cultures and stuff that maybe didn't have this mythology, but the big cultures on earth, the primary cultures, all told stories about a time when the gods dwelt among men, and those stories usually involve details regarding the gods not only dwelling among men, but copulating with the daughters of men and creating demigods, hybrid demigods. And again, this is ubiquitous across the earth. And it's well known that this golden age narrative is mysteriously everywhere. It's universal. And so that's the way that's the paganized version. It's when we say golden age. Because the golden age it's lauded by the ancients. It's this time of great knowledge. It's this time that's looked back to with longing. And it really is what the ancients were looking forward to with longing. That this golden age that there would be another advent of the golden age on earth. And this is what they were secretly longing for, and not secretly now. The Luciferians and some of these secret societies are secretly longing for and working towards the resurrection, the reinstitution of the golden age. But in the ancient world, this was the time of great knowledge in their minds. It was a time before the great cataclysm, usually depicted as a flood. But the flood encompassed everything. There was a lot of volcanism. There was a lot of seismic activity. The Noahic flood. So it's depicted a little bit different in each culture, but usually as a flood. And so this was a time. This golden age was a time before the flood of Noah. And again, in the pagan world, it's a time of great knowledge and peace and prosperity, except the Hebrews. They had a different account. Mm-hmm. The Hebrews almost stand alone in that their account, their reckoning of the golden age is the polar opposite. They view the golden age as an intrusion of the gods into the earth, and that the gods wrought corruption and chaos and bloodshed and rebellion, and that it was a time of great suffering, and it was a time of war and unrest, the very opposite, the polar opposite of what the pagan account is, and that it too ended in a great cataclysm, and of course that's the flood of Noah, and it ended as a result of God's wrath to bring to an end this, what I call the empire of the gods.
One thing that's really interesting, you talk a lot about the book of Enoch, and it doesn't only give us a clearer picture of Genesis 6, but there's often something that's usually overlooked by others, but you go into detail about it in Birthright. The amazing prophecies of Jesus. What does Enoch say about Jesus, and how does it help fill in some of the context in the Bible?
Yeah, that pushes us forward to the future chapter of Jacob and Esau. But there's a lot there's astounding prophecies from the book of Enoch regarding Christ, messianic prophecies. And the book of Enoch opens up addressing a generation that would live at the age. You could make the argument that the book of Enoch opens up addressing the generation that will be alive when the flood comes, but I think there's a dual interpretation there, that it's addressing both the impending flood, because it was Enoch, a few generations behind Noah, and also the cataclysm that's coming at the end of the age.
Right.
Because the cataclysm that's coming at the end of the age is likened to the flood. It might even be the same mechanism that caused the flood, that causes the great cataclysm at the end of the age. It's a different conversation. So yeah, the book of Enoch they're just incredible. I go into a lot of detail about the book of Enoch because there's a lot of controversy surrounding the book of Enoch. But I think because the messianic content is so prescient and accurate, a lot of people assume that the book of Enoch, that those portions of the book of Enoch must have been written in the age of the apostles or shortly thereafter.
Yeah, they say the same thing about Daniel and all that.
Exactly.
If there's an accurate prophecy, it must have a later date.
Exactly. So, but I think that I'm absolutely persuaded that, and of course there's three versions. I don't want to get bogged down in doing a whole discussion on the book of Enoch, but there's three versions of the book of Enoch, and only one of them is credible. Mm-hmm. But anyway, there's some phenomenal messianic content in the book of Enoch that's undeniable, and it does relate to the events that transpired before the first cataclysm, and similar events that are going to transpire before the final cataclysm at the end of the age. The end of the age, by the way, the age in which we are now in. We are in the final age.
Yeah.
It began with the birth of Christ. We're in the age of Pisces. And when it changes to Aquarius, I believe that's the end of the age. And so the stuff is coming, and it's coming soon.
We have that great example from the ancient past of sort of what we can expect, and obviously we can't bring up Enoch and not talk about the fall of the Watchers. A lot of people watching probably already know the basic story, but you bring out some other details that not everyone has heard, and it really shows how bad this time of history really was. What are some of these lesser known details about not only human DNA perversion but also animal hybridization as well?
Yeah, I mentioned the Book of the Giants, which was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's very fragmented, so we don't really know the full story of the Book of Giants. It's kind of just highlights and adds some additional information into the general narrative of Genesis 6, the narrative of the Book of the Watchers in Enoch. And it talks about the Watchers not just corrupting the human species, but all different kinds of animal species on Earth. And whether that corruption was through direct fornication or whether it was through some kind of germline genetic engineering, I don't know. But I do know that the corruption of the human species was a result of fornication. There's no doubt about that. So whether the angels then went and copulated, whether the sons of God went and copulated with the animals, and I doubt it. I think that was probably some kind of a germline genetic engineering scenario. But let me go back to the beginning, because one of the first thing that I deal with when talking about the fall of the Watchers is what I call we mentioned this, I think actually I might have mentioned this to Derek Gilbert, but the fall of the Watchers began with what I call the first cause. What was the first cause of the fall of the Watchers? And I think the first cause of the fall of the Watchers was very clearly lust. They lusted after the daughters of Adam. They saw human women and they lusted. After all, they were watching, they're watchers. And they're looking down and seeing the female counterpart of Adam, females, the wives of Adam's offspring, of his male offspring, and so they were envious of the men for their wives. So when we talk about the fall of the Watchers, we have to deal with what I call the first cause. And the first cause of the fall of the Watchers is very clearly lust. Whether people like it or not, that's what both the book of Genesis 6 says, and also the book of Enoch, the account of Enoch, and other extra biblical texts. And so the first cause is unequivocally lust. They saw the daughters of Adam and they lusted after them. But that's not all that they did. They lusted after the women, but they also desired to produce their own offspring, which is very important. So I think that there are three three primary things that the Watchers coveted, and these were the three primary motivations of the descent of the Watchers. And I'm just going to read them right out of my book. I list them in my book. Number one is wives. Mankind was granted a special privilege that was not afforded to the sons of God, a female counterpart, a wife. The Watchers envied men for their wives. Number one. Number two, offspring. Because men have female counterparts, they could procreate offspring. The Watchers wanted to beget their own children and have families, like the sons of Adam. Number three, dominion. Mankind was given dominion of planet Earth. The Watchers coveted man's dominion and plotted to usurp it by producing their own human hybrid sons. This is perhaps the most important and overlooked aspect of their transgression, and it is indeed the most important and overlooked transgression of aspect of the Watchers' transgression. The Watchers, I believe, had this they plotted to usurp Adam's dominion on earth. How were they going to do it? They knew that Adam had dominion. His dominion is being enforced by the armies of the kingdom, like we talked about earlier. So how can they usurp his dominion and basically take over the earth without themselves stealing it from Adam, because they're not allowed to do that. So they have to usurp the throne of Adam. And the only way that they could do that was to produce heirs to the throne that were human enough to appropriate Adam's authority and to receive the birthright of his genome. Human enough to appropriate the authority and the dominion of Adam. And that's precisely what they did. And I think actually it was pretty ingenious what they did, because not only did they create hybrids who were human enough to usurp the dominion of the human race on Earth, but these hybrids also were really big. These were exceedingly large and powerful entities. So not only could they have the right to Adam's throne, not only could they claim the right to Adam's throne, they had the prowess, the ability, the power to take it by force. And that's precisely what they did. And I believe that the Watchers then created a scenario. They instituted what I call, again, the empire of the gods. Mm-hmm. A scenario in which the gods, the Watchers, were on Earth. They did not have the authority of Adam, so they circumvented that problem by producing their own offspring who were legal claimants to the throne, who could occupy human thrones because they were human enough to do it. And they did indeed occupy human thrones, and men willingly worshiped them and bowed down to them, the offspring of the gods. And remember, by the way, I believe that the Watchers struck a bargain with a faction of the human race, with the line of Cain. I believe the Watchers struck a bargain with the sons of Cain. They would give them what they wanted, and in turn, they would get what they wanted. Remember, we are the regents of Earth. People need to get this in their heads. You can't have fallen angels, which is, by the way, the term fallen angels is a contrivance. Right. I don't really like to use it because it's not a biblical term, but I mean, the concept is true enough. Fallen angels can't just come and kick us out and take over. If they could, they would have a long time ago. The Watchers couldn't just come down, set up shop, and just eradicate us all. They did not have the authority to do that, and they knew that they would be in trouble if they tried very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. Because the armies of the kingdom would show up, who enforce our authority. All right, so they had to strike a bargain with us. We had to abdicate authority. We had to allow them, to grant them to do something. Okay, and This is what the book of Enoch says. The watchers came down. They landed on Hermon. They came, by the way, remember, where's that gate that I say to Eden, to the Axis Mundi? Hermon.
Right.
It's no coincidence that they show up on Hermon, okay? They come down into the plains, and I believe they strike a bargain specifically with the sons of Cain, with the offspring of Cain. Okay, they strike a bargain. And the bargain is, we're going to teach you the knowledge that you were striving to learn. This is what the book of Enoch says. The watchers taught men the knowledge they were striving to learn. So the watchers already knew what the knowledge that the offspring of Cain were attempting to learn, that they were desirous to learn. All right? The watchers had that knowledge. We'll teach you. What do we want in return? Give us your daughters. Mm-hmm. Let us take them as wives. Notice, Josh, that they didn't just come down and fornicate.
Right.
They didn't just come down and rape women. They wanted wives. They took wives. So they chose wives. I want to marry your daughter. Give me your blessing to marry her. I will give you knowledge. You grant me the blessing. You give me the blessing to marry your daughter. Give me the legal precedent, the legal authority to marry your daughter, me, a watcher, and I'm going to give you in turn knowledge. It's a bargain. A bargain was struck. Okay? Why? Because we're the regents of the earth. The watchers are coming into our domain. By the way, anybody or anything, aside from the king himself, who comes into our domain is in our jurisdiction.
Right.
Right? We're the regents. You break the law in our realm, guess who's going to judge you? The regents. This is why it says I believe Paul says that we will judge angels. Which angels? Specifically the ones that transgressed in our realm. Okay? We're the regents. We have the authority. You come into our realm, you interlope into our realm, you transgress in our realm, we have the authority to judge you. That's why Enoch was appointed as what would you call him? He was the intermediary between God and the watchers. It had to be a man. They broke the law in our realm, and therefore it was a son of man, Enoch, who was delivering their sentence. Okay? God used a human intermediary purposely to judge the watchers who committed, even though the watchers are of a higher estate than we are. When they're in our territory, they're under our jurisdiction. All right? In the same way that if you and I are diplomats from the United States, the most powerful government on earth, and we go to Peru and we break the law in Peru, which is not even close to being as powerful as our government.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You and I would still be subject to the laws of Peru, and then we would be judged by Peruvian judges. We're under their jurisdiction. Right?
Right.
Same concept. So the watchers had to strike a bargain. They're trying to get this done without the kingdom of heaven interfering. They're trying to do it legally. All right? The game has rules. Like I say in my book, the Game of Thrones has rules. It's not chaos. No, God is not a God of chaos. He's a God of order. And there's procedure and there is order. And you can't nilly-willy break the laws. Not the laws of physics and not the laws of God. You can't. All right? And get away with it. Okay? So the watchers are here. They're in our jurisdiction. They know that in order to do what they want to do, they have to be sly. They have to be cunning, just like the serpent. They have to be cunning. They have to get us to abdicate our authority, and then they have to usurp the dominion of the earth. They can't just take it. They have to usurp it. So they strike a bargain with the offspring of Cain. I believe it was the offspring of Cain, and there's reasons why I say that. Strike a bargain. We're going to teach you the knowledge you want. You give us your wives in marriage. Above board and legal, right? The offspring of Cain were legally authorized to give their wives in marriage. And of course, this is the way that the ancient world worked. It wasn't like Match.com where you just go out and find a partner and you end up marrying them. No, the fathers who were the authority in their households, they were the chiefs of their homes, right? They could give, they had to give their daughters in marriage, give them in marriage. You had to get the father's blessing. And by the way, that law is still in effect, even though we don't follow it anymore.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's not an operation, okay? And there's problems that arise when it's not done properly. It's just the way it is. So the fathers had to give their daughters in marriage. You had to get them, and you know, that's where the dowries and things like this come to play. So the watchers, you know, they gave a dowry for the hand of the daughters. They gave knowledge. The men gave their daughters in marriage, not rape, not just fornication, in marriage. Very important point there.
Yeah.
What's it demonstrating? It's demonstrating our authority is what it's demonstrating. Okay? Given their daughters in marriage, and then the watchers gave their knowledge. They taught men to do all these things, right? And they wrought great evil in the earth. It's like giving kids matches and sending them to run through dry fields, to go play in dry fields, right? So the watchers then did something very cunning. They had their wives now. They got these wives, so they get to fulfill the first cause. They get to fulfill their first desire, which is to take wives and to copulate with them because they lusted. They were lusting after these women. They copulated. Now they get to fulfill their second desire, which is to procreate offspring, hybrid offspring. And that is indeed what they did. The women gave birth to hybrid half-breed sons, possibly daughters too, certainly half-breed sons, okay? And these sons, you and I think talked about this before, there's some tale in which the women's, uteruses burst open and their bellies burst open and these giant babies came rolling out. I'm of the persuasion, those are in some extra biblical texts, I'm of the persuasion that it was like very much like gigantism. Mm-hmm. Women give birth to babies with gigantism, normal-sized babies. And those babies, because of the disease of the genetic anomaly of gigantism, their growth accelerates. After they're born, their growth accelerates. Mm-hmm. And they end up becoming huge. So that same principle could have been in fact. The women could have given birth to normal-sized babies, and then something in their genomes kicked in, accelerated growth, okay? And there's probably half a dozen other ideas. So these hybrids are emerging from the womb, part watcher, part, I'm going to use this term, elder race, and part human race. What ratio? They're probably a little bit more elder race according to the book of Enoch, because it said you were mainly of your fathers, remember? But human enough to inherit the birthright of Adam. And there's the key. To legally inherit the birthright of Adam. So watch what the watchers did. The watchers legally made an agreement with the regents of the earth, us, for our daughters. We give you knowledge, you give us your women to take as wives. And then they gave birth to legal claimants to the throne of Adam, human enough to occupy that throne. Okay? And that's exactly what they did. And then, the watchers achieved through their sons, they achieved. So through their wives, they achieved their second objective, the procreation of their sons. And through their sons, they achieved the third objective, dominion of the earth by proxy. And I talk a lot about this idea, rule by proxy. It's very, very important. I won't go into it now, but it's in my book. This concept of rule by proxy. So if I can't legally have dominion on the earth, but I can create a hybrid son who can, then I can, in effect, rule from behind his throne. All right? Mm-hmm. And now we are setting up a shadow. Now we're beginning to understand maybe what the dragon is going to do with his son at the end of the age. His son, Apollo, at the end of the age. And that's what happened. So they usurped the earth, dominion of the earth. Men, according to the book of Enoch, they were subjugated to the offspring of the watchers, and they had to feed them, remember? And when they couldn't sustain them anymore, what did the offspring of the watchers do? Because they were giants, they devoured the men. Mm-hmm. And so it was a dystopia. It was a dystopia in which the offspring of the watchers were ruling the earth. Men have lost dominion. It was usurped. And that's why the slate had to be cleaned in this, and there had to be a reset.
In the book, you talk about, the satanic dragon priesthood of Cain, how that connects with things like Cyclopean architecture, which this is just the remnants of these hybrids that you talked about that still exist today. We can still see these sites from the Golden Age. But like you said, there had to be a reset. And you bring out some really interesting things about the flood, such as how, the angel Raphael was commanded to heal this plague before the flood so that Noah's sons could have genetically pure wives, and how that paved the way for Jesus. What are some of the things that you found that gives us the real story behind the flood, that only mankind had the right to rule the earth, instead of this cartoonish Sunday school version that most Christians are told?
You raise a critical point here, which is that, of course, you got to ask the question, where was the devil in all of this, right? And when I say the devil, of course, the devil is a very generic colloquial term that I think the best designation is the dragon.
Right.
That's who this really. The Bible. You know who this is? It's like the Harry Potter series. It's like Voldemort, he who shall not be named, or however it is. That's how the Bible treats this guy.
Yeah.
Because his name isn't Lucifer. That's not his name. And it's okay for people to call him Lucifer. I guess that's an appropriate designation because it does fit. But we're not told his name. It's his name is not to be spoken. It's like his name is. He's so abominable that he's so despicable that his name isn't spoken. Right. That's how this character is treated in the Bible.
Right.
And so he's called by many names, and dragon is one, the dragon. But I think there are more than one dragon, by the way. I think there's 7, and I get into that in the book. But this goes back to what people have called the seed war. Back in Genesis 3, where the Maker himself pronounces this prophecy that the offspring of the offspring of the serpent would be in perpetual conflict with the offspring of the woman, and that her seed would basically fight with your seed, and you will bruise his heel, but he will crush your head. And so this is a prophecy that, again, is spoken from the lips of the Maker. So the dragon has a problem right off the bat. He knows he knows there's a dragon slayer. That's what I call it, the dragon slayer prophecy. He knows there's a dragon slayer coming at some point, and that dragon slayer who's going to crush his head is going to be born from the womb of a daughter of Eve. He knows that. And it's inevitable. God spoke it. It's not, will this prophecy come to pass? It's coming to pass. And so he goes about and he spends all of his effort and energy on foiling this prophecy, frustrating this prophecy. And so the question that always really bothered me was, you have this group of entities called Watchers who descend to the earth and engage in all this chicanery on earth. Where was the devil? Where was the dragon during all of this? Why wasn't he implicated in this crime?
Right.
And I think he was much more cunning than that. I think he probably maybe set the board for this to happen. Maybe he brought the pieces together, but he kept his hands clean enough not to be implicated in the judgment of the Watchers. He did not commit their transgression yet. I think he will, but he hasn't yet. He did not commit their transgression. If he had, he would have paid their penalty.
Right.
He didn't. The justice of God is not arbitrary. It's not whimsical. As I said, the law of God is the law of God. It governs the universe. You commit the crime, you pay the price. The judgment fits the crime. And if the devil had committed the same trespass as the Watchers, he would have been subject to the same condemnation. And he's not yet. So he kept his hands clean, at least clean enough not to be subject to their condemnation, which was to be bound in chains and so forth, and put down in Tartarus, which, by the way, isn't that what happens to the dragon at the end of the age?
That's right.
Sounds like he's committing the same crime to me. So, but hasn't yet. So this idea, this question of where's the devil in all of this, it's interesting to me because I believe that the dragon was involved in enticing the different elements here that were involved in the transgression of the Watchers.
Mm-hmm.
But his goal wasn't to produce offspring on Earth and do all of this yet. His goal was to eradicate the human species. That was his goal. That was his goal. His prime objective was to get rid of the offspring of Adam. Why? Because if he could eliminate the human species on planet Earth, then he would succeed in foiling the dragon slayer prophecy. There wouldn't be any more daughters of Eve to give birth to a dragon slayer. Because the son of Adam is coming. And there's a son of Adam who's going to be born at some point in time who is going to crush your head. Mm-hmm. And so you got to stop this from happening. And this is, of course, what he does from start to finish. I mean, we see this machination all the way through the Bible. Lots of people have talked about this, and it's true. It's true. This was the dragon's primary objective. I'm going to eradicate the human race off the face of the planet, and therefore avoid this fate of mine, again, pronounced from the lips of the Maker. So that was his goal. The Watchers had a different goal. The Watchers wanted dominion of the earth. The dragon wants dominion of the earth too, and he's going to get it for a time, just like the Watchers did. But that's not until the end of this age. And so I don't remember the question you asked me. Oh, and so so you have the narrative of Christ. This is the driving narrative of Scripture from beginning to end. This is the real issue here. Christ is coming. Christ is coming, and the dragon is trying to stop him. He obviously fails. Christ is born from the virgin womb of a daughter of Eve. By the way, little digression here. We were talking about C.S. Lewis earlier, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember who has the right to rule in Narnia?
It's been years.
Only the sons and daughters of Adam.
Oh, right.
So C.S. Lewis was onto this, okay? And there was somebody trying to usurp the throne of the sons and daughters of Adam, and that was the witch, right? Who was not a son or daughter of Adam. Okay, so there's a little rabbit hole for people if they're fans of the C.S. Lewis. I'm telling you, Tolkien and Lewis were all over this stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so this is the machination of the dragon and the machination of the Watchers. They're different. They've got different goals here. The Watchers want to procreate half-breed sons who can inherit the birthright of Adam, so that they can have dominion of the earth. The dragon, in this point in time, wants to eradicate the human race. Their purposes cross paths. They dovetail. Mm-hmm. So the dragon doesn't get his hands dirty in their transgression yet, but he's going to. He didn't yet, though. And so their plan fails. Why? Because of what you just said. A pure stock was preserved. The unblemished line of Adam was preserved in Noah. Just in time, by the way. The days were shortened, Josh, for the sake of the elect. Not to save their lives, but to preserve their humanity. You understand what I'm telling you?
Yeah.
So the days were shortened before the flood, so that what was probably a germline genetic situation happening, just spreading out for, by way of reproduction, corrupting all flesh on earth, right? But the flood came soon enough, and God ensured that Noah's line was not corrupted to preserve the human seed of mankind, the genetic seed of mankind. And the reason why I'm saying it in these terms is because we know that at the end of the age, the days are going to be shortened for the sake of the elect. I believe, not to save their lives. I mean, we're all going to die.
Right.
Not to save our lives, but to preserve our humanity. Just like before the flood, I think the same kind of a scenario is going to unfold. Different for several reasons. Not exactly the same. I don't believe the Watchers are going to get unchained. I'm not one who believes that the Watchers are going to get unchained. And why would they get unchained? They've been condemned. Okay, they're in chains and they're condemned. I don't believe the Watchers are going to be unchained. I believe that the dragon is going to commit. He's going to commit the transgression that he didn't commit with the Watchers back in the pre-flood world. He's going to do it, but he's not going to do it until he knows that his days are short. And he's almost out of time. It's the last card that's going to be played. And that leads to the Battle of Armageddon, and that's